The science has reached a point now where we are able to take to very high levels the level of information on cannabinoids. This is a satellite symposium at the World Congress on Pain, which is to be held in Montreal this summer. A full day on cannabinoids and pain is being held with some of the top speakers from around the country. Professor Russo will be speaking on behalf of GW at this meeting. We have pharmaceutical companies, AstraZeneca and Pfizer speaking. We have people speaking about cannabinoids in depression, cannabinoids in cancer, cannabinoids in a wide range of other conditions relevant to pain. This is a symbol of just how seriously people are taking cannabinoids. If I may conclude with some very simple recommendations, and please, I don't mean to suggest beyond my position, but in having reviewed many of these things, I'd like to make the following suggestions. I think for cannabinoids in medicine to have any future, there has to be involvement of physicians and education of doctors. These are the people who ultimately will be important in understanding how the drugs work and talking about it with the patients who need them. There's also a need to educate the patients and the public about what cannabinoids are. It is very easy to have access to the media for stories on marijuana. They love it, they can put a big green leaf on the newspaper and it will sell newspapers. But it is very easy for these messages to be missed and for the opportunity for real education to be missed. And I encourage everybody here who has a chance to talk about cannabis as a medicine to try to take it seriously and avoid the stereotypes as we heard at the beginning of the session yesterday. We also have to educate the politicians and the people who make policy. They also do not understand that cannabinoids have a science base behind them, that there are legitimate cannabinoid medications, and that there is a scientific basis behind which cannabinoids can be used. They often hear marijuana and they think of people smoking it on the street. They need to be educated. We need research. We've heard already in the last day so many conditions for which there has been no research. To my knowledge, in Canada, where an epilepsy patient was the reason why cannabis was made into an authorized substance, there has never been a clinical study looking at cannabis in epilepsy. For CBD, I think this is important. We need to understand these patients. I understand from some of you that you see patients using cannabis as part of a harm reduction strategy in dealing with the use of other substances. This needs to be evaluated formally. And I suggest that any program that's set up include this as one of its arms. I understand that here in Brazil there is to be a program of crack cocaine program of policy. I understand from some of my Canadian colleagues that patients using crack use cannabis as a way to help them come off crack. So maybe there's an opportunity there to include cannabis research within a crack policy. Clinical trials are important with standardized substances, with good outcomes which are meaningful to the patients. And we still need data on long-term safety. Whether the drugs are used as a pill, as a spray, or as a smoked drug or vaporized drug, there are still concerns about effects on cognitive function and effects on the lungs. There is a very important need to understand the supply of the medication. It must come from quality-controlled sources. Cannabis that comes from the street is of unknown quality and unknown levels of THC. And for it to be a medicine, it must be standardized and regulated. There's a need to stimulate innovation from companies that wish to identify new molecules or develop new compounds, and processes to be put in place which allow and facilitate this kind of research, importing substances from overseas, making it more possible for scientists to get access to cannabinoids for use in clinical studies as well as in basic research is very important. The barriers that exist to doing this kind of work are tremendous, as well as the licensing of cannabis and cannabinoid production facilities to gain access. Finally, I would like to make a plea for collaboration. From what I heard yesterday and from what I know of cannabinoid research in general, Brazil is seen as one of the leading lights internationally in the world of cannabidiol research and some of the research on mental health and addiction. This is something which You have heard yesterday, but you must know that people around the world look at Brazil as a leading area of research, and you're very, very honored to have the kind of quality of research that's being conducted. But you must also know that countries around the world are struggling with exactly the same questions that Brazil is facing now. Canada, Europe, the United States, and countries in the East are also facing issues around cannabis and cannabinoid medications. So you're not alone. And there is a great deal to be learned from each other, from discussing and sharing the information and the knowledge. And I think this symposium goes a long way towards addressing these issues. I invite collaboration between Canada and Brazil. I think we share many, many similarities. I think you probably are where Canada was about 10 years ago. We've made some mistakes along the way, and it would be our hope that if we can possibly help to steer the direction to avoid some of those mistakes, it may be very useful and productive for you. And finally, just to thank my Brazilian hosts, in particular Paulo Maco, who was an outstanding, and I think I've made some new friends here in the last 2 days, to thank you very much for your hospitality and for your attention as well. Thank you.